Thank you for joining us today for the third public meeting for the North Lakeshore Drive Phase 1 study. Following this presentation, we invite you to review exhibits, ask questions, provide input through written comments, and take the online survey at laptops in the main exhibit room. The North Lakeshore Drive study area begins at Grand Avenue and extends approximately 7 miles north to Hollywood Avenue. Many of the infrastructure elements within the project study area are over 80 years old and have reached the end of their useful design life. There are many safety concerns, with an average of 3 crashes a day occurring on the drive. This study is a part of a larger initiative to upgrade infrastructure and improve safety throughout all of Lakeshore Drive. Multiple projects have been completed on Lakeshore Drive over the past 20 years, including the museum campus, the South LSD rebuild and extension, South Lakefront bridges, and the current Lakefront Trail separation initiative. The Project Study Group, or PSG, consists of a multidisciplinary team of representatives from the Illinois Department of Transportation, the Chicago Department of Transportation, the Federal Highway Administration, the Chicago Park District, and the Chicago Transit Authority. This group provides technical oversight and expertise in key areas including study processes, agency procedures and standards, and technical approaches. Some of you may have joined us for the prior 2 public meetings, yet many more of you may be joining us for the first time. We want to highlight the required steps for federally funded projects like this and where we are in this process. The 3 steps for federally funded projects include Phase 1, where we are currently preparing an Environmental Impact Statement, or EIS, which is the most detailed and rigorous study process. After Phase 1 is complete, Phase 2 engineering would begin. This is detailed engineering, including preparation of design plans or blueprints. Phase 3 is construction. At this time, only Phase 1 is funded. Over the past few years, we have spent a lot of time capturing your ideas for the corridor, collecting data about existing conditions, considering transportation needs, and developing a range of alternatives. To date, we have received and reviewed over 2,000 public comments. One of the first milestones for this study was to determine the project's purpose and need. This establishes a foundation for the alternatives development and evaluation process. The purpose and need for this project was discussed at public meeting number 1. The fundamental purpose and need points for this study are: improve safety for all users, improve mobility for all users, address infrastructure deficiencies, and improve access and circulation. After approval of the Purpose and Need Statement in December 2014, the next step was to look at all possible ideas to address the needs of the transportation corridor, keeping environmental considerations in mind. We collected thousands of ideas from the public and even had a few of our own. Today you will see what we call a range of alternatives, which includes everything from large-scale corridor-wide improvements to a no-action alternative, which only includes performing regular maintenance to the roadway. We have begun the process of whittling down the alternatives, but we are still far from determining a preferred alternative. At each milestone, we reduce the number of options and study those that remain in greater detail. At one of the meeting stations today, you can see the range of initial alternatives. For these alternatives, a Level 1 screening was performed. We recommend some of the alternatives should be removed based on this screening, since at least one of the following applied. It did not meet the project's purpose and stated objectives. It contained major flaws. It was not financially feasible or reasonable based on significantly greater cost compared to other viable alternatives, or it resulted in severe and unacceptable socioeconomic or environmental impacts. With the understanding of how alternatives will be evaluated, we will now discuss the initial range of alternatives that are being considered and the results of the Level 1 screening. Alternatives fall into 5 major categories: no action, transitways, managed lanes, tunnels and causeways, and context-tailored treatments. The first alternative to be considered is the 2040 no action. No action assumes that routine maintenance is performed on North Lakeshore Drive, but there are no additional trail, transit, or roadway improvements along the drive by the year 2040. When we apply the Level 1 screening criteria to the no action, our analyses indicate that the no action does not satisfy purpose and need. However, it does provide a baseline condition to which all other alternatives will be compared. One of the categories of alternatives we are considering is termed transitways. These are facilities that specifically address transit movements in the corridor. There are 4 options within this category: bus on left, dedicated transitway; bus on right with shoulder or weaving zones; transitway off alignment; and light rail transit. It should be noted that all of these options, as considered in the Level 1 screening, include the retention of 4 general traffic lanes in each direction on the outer drive, and would then add a lane or dedicated spaces for transit movements. Based on Level 1 screening, the following 3 alternatives are recommended for further evaluation: bus on right, bus on left, and off-alignment transitway. All options also provide the opportunity for bus-only queued jump lanes to bypass congestion at entrance or exit ramps. It is important to understand that the project team is considering all of these alternatives, and the results of the Level 2 screening will be presented at the next public meeting. As part of Level 1 screening, light rail transit was also evaluated and is recommended to be dismissed as a standalone alternative because it did not meet the project purpose and need. In order for light rail transit to be viable, it would need to serve destinations beyond our project corridor. An 11-mile system extending between McCormick Place and Loyola University has been suggested as an initial system which extends well beyond the North Lakeshore Drive study limits. There is a requirement for specialized vehicles, maintenance shop, and storage yard, and there is significantly greater capital cost compared to other alternatives with similar benefits, with total capital costs in excess of $4 billion for the light rail transit system alone. The project team will continue to design transitway alternatives to be forward compatible with light rail transit where feasible, with options such as bus on left or off-alignment transitway. The next category in the initial range of alternatives is managed lanes. There are 5 types of managed lanes we are evaluating: high occupancy vehicle lanes, high occupancy toll lanes, express toll lanes, bus-only lanes, express reversible lanes, and toll lanes. The managed lane alternatives are different from transitway alternatives in that it is assumed that the managed lane or lanes would convert one or more of the existing traffic lanes. Managed lanes are a congestion management strategy designed to improve the performance of a constrained system and potentially provide travel time reliability for CTA buses and managed lane users. Managed lanes provide mobility and operational efficiency to adapt to changing travel demands. Under all managed lanes alternatives, CTA buses may shift out of general purpose lanes to use the facility wherever it aligns with bus routes. Further, the managed lane alternatives can be implemented in combination with context-tailored treatments and transitway options. You can learn more about these options in the exhibit hall. All are being recommended for further evaluation at this time. Future public meetings will provide additional Level 2 screening results to managed lanes. The next category of initial improvement alternatives that we looked at are tunnels and causeways. 3 options were considered: a submerged express tunnel in Lake Michigan, land-based express tunnel below a surface boulevard on the current North Lakeshore Drive alignment, and a causeway in Lake Michigan from Chicago Avenue to Diversey Parkway. The first 2 alternatives provide express tunnel options, either submerged in Lake Michigan or land-based, which primarily serve longer end-to-end travel through the corridor. The cost of both options would be much greater than other alternatives, in excess of $3 billion, and would require operating expenses several times greater than other alternatives due to the need for items such as an extensive ventilation system to purge auto exhaust and smoke from traffic emergencies. As illustrated with the red triangles on the graphic, access to North Lakeshore Drive would need to be reconfigured, resulting in traffic concentrated at fewer access points. This would result in traffic impacts to local streets. Based on this, the tunnel options are recommended to be dismissed from further consideration, as the tunnels do not meet purpose and need, and even with user fees, public costs would far exceed costs of other viable alternatives. It should be noted, however, that short tunnel segments may be considered as a context-tailored treatment to minimize roadway impacts. The third option realigns the outer drive onto offshore bridges in Lake Michigan, or causeway, from Chicago Avenue to Diversey Parkway. On the exhibit, the yellow line denotes the Causeway Bridge. Similar to the tunnel options, the capital cost and operating costs are several times greater than other alternatives with similar benefits. The causeway eliminates direct access to Michigan Avenue, which would divert traffic to Chicago Avenue and LaSalle Drive, and would require special measures to prevent pollution of Lake Michigan from roadway runoff and salt spray. In addition, even with user fees, public costs would far exceed costs of other viable alternatives. Based on this, the causeway option is recommended to be dismissed from further consideration, as causeways do not meet the purpose and need. The final category of alternatives are context-tailored treatments. The context-tailored treatments are applied as appropriate throughout the corridor to improve safety, mobility, and access for all users. These treatments can be combined in a number of ways to create several alternatives that will respond to needs outlined in the purpose and need. The context-tailored treatments improvements are specifically tailored to the varying roadway, transit, bicycle pedestrian travel, and shoreline protection needs along the corridor. These alternatives have been developed with the recognition that locations along the corridor not only have varying needs, but different surroundings or contexts within which to satisfy those needs. Context-tailored treatments include 4 types of treatments: bike and pedestrian improvements, transit improvements, shoreline protection, and roadway improvements. There are 3 concepts for the context-tailored treatments alternative category: the corridor modernization concept, the compressed roadway concept, and the frontage drive concept. Each of these have their own unique characteristics, yet many of the elements are not mutually exclusive and can be applied to other concepts as well. We are recommending that this category of alternatives be further evaluated. The context-tailored treatments concepts have passed the Level 1 screening and have moved into the Level 2 screening. Similar to what we will show you for transitways and managed lanes at the next public meeting, we have provided Level 2 exhibits for you to review at this meeting today. In the main exhibit room, you will see 3 concepts for each context-tailored treatments corridor section. We ask that you review and comment on the exhibits for each context-tailored treatments concept. This table summarizes the initial range of alternatives that have been considered, and based on Level 1 screening, which alternatives are recommended for dismissal and which will be further considered. At this time, it is recommended that light rail transit and all the tunnels and causeways be eliminated from further study. All other alternatives will be further evaluated. You can review all of these alternatives at the initial alternative station in the room next door. Staff will be available to answer your questions on this topic. As noted for this meeting today, we are taking a deeper dive into the Level 2 exhibits for Context-Tailored Treatments category of alternatives. The Context-Tailored Treatments category is identified with the purple box here. The North Lakeshore Drive project is an exciting and complex study, and we welcome your input. It is the marriage of lake, beach, park, bikes, pedestrians, roadway, and transit. Your input and participation on this unique and exciting project will lead to a once-in-a-lifetime vision for the future of North Lakeshore Drive. We ask you provide your comments today on the hard copy or online comment form, as well as fill out an online survey regarding the context-tailored treatments alternatives. The hard copy forms are located in the lounge. The exhibits and alternative station are located in the room next door. We now invite you to enter the exhibit area for both the range of alternatives and the context-tailored treatment corridor exhibits. Thank you for your participation. This PowerPoint will begin again in 3 minutes.